heard the Lord speak to me, and he said, I told you I wanted you to preach on a certain topic or a certain scripture that I gave you, and you moved it to next week. And I said, I didn't ask you to move it to next week. I said, he told me, he said, there was somebody in this service that needs to hear what I'm about to say. Growing up, I had a good life. I wasn't the most popular by any means in high school or even college. Shoot, I'm not the most popular in my household. I'd always felt like I was good, but not good enough. I always felt like I was living in somebody else's shadow. My friends had more money, they had more cars, they had better lifestyles, better houses. I could go on and on and on, but I still had a good life. Even when I got into ministry, I never wanted to be a pastor. I never, ever wanted to be a pastor. Anybody that says they did, they have lost their mind. I wanted to be a preacher, not a pastor. There's a difference. And even that, I've always felt like I was in someone else's shadow. Even when we planted this church 8 years ago, I was just glad somebody showed up at the time. There was only 10. Now we have 12. But I just never felt like I always wanted to be like everybody else. I remember my friend Troy, who is one of the best preachers I know, great pastor, and I would sit and look at his church, and I would go visit it. When I stepped away from ministry after my divorce, we would go there, and I just sat on the back pew, and I was thinking, man, I don't think I can't do what he does. I've worked for some of the greatest pastors in America, some of the biggest churches in the world. I used to think, Lisa, I can never do what they do. I always felt like I lived in someone else's shadow. And when you live in someone else's shadow, you do it for a reason. When you live in somebody else's shadow, there's benefits of it. And I began to think, for the longest time, why would I not step out and try something different? I realized when I'm in somebody else's shadow, I'm under their protection. They're the ones taking the risk. They're the ones that's responsible for providing everything. Now, I know that most of you are not pastors, thank God, because I would be out of a job. I'm glad I'm in a rare form. I'm glad I'm different than everybody else. That way I call that job security, because I figure there's always a bunch of misfit people that kind of look for a preacher that makes them feel good about their life. But we do that in business too. We do it in our relationships. We just don't feel like we're comfortable of stepping out of somebody's shadow. We all do it. We've all been there. So today, I just want to take a minute without notes and just a couple verses to share with you what God showed me. I was sitting with a group of pastors Tuesday, and I looked around the room, and the Lord, I'm not one of these weird people. Well, who am I kidding? I am a weird person. I'm not one that likes to say God said something unless I know that God said something. So many people violate Scripture by trying to manipulate people into doing what they want you to do just simply because they can and they think they heard from the Lord. You will not hear me say very often, other than when I can point to the book and chapter, verse, and line, say God said something. But today, I want to tell you God said something. Can I have your Bible, please? Mine's on the computer, but I feel really holy and nostalgic that I'm going paper version because I just feel like that, and I have the microphone, and I can. But I was sitting in that room with those other 4 pastors, and I looked around, and I said, here's the thing, and I won't tell you who they were, but they were people that were always in somebody else's shadow. And right now, they've been forced into the forefront because that shadow has disappeared. And I began to think, and the Lord began to speak to me. He said, Matt, he encouraged them to understand that you got to get out from somebody else's shadow and get into God's shadow. When I stand in the corner under someone else's shadow, it's because I expect them to handle some things that I don't feel like I'm strong enough to handle. The book of Psalm, the 91st Psalm says it this way, and I want to show you the importance of getting out of somebody else's shadow and walking into where God wants you to be and what God's purpose of your life is. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, now He is my refuge and my fortress, my God. Everybody say my God, in Him I will trust. Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. Verse 4, He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. He shall not be afraid, and you shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor the destruction that lays waste at noonday. I want to pause right there. I want to go back to the verse 1. Verse 1. Go back to verse 1. This is me writing a sermon as we go. We all right with this? He who dwells, not visits, dwells. Now, I want to tell you, I have this house. I have this house that we live in. I have this house that we live in, and we travel a lot. Well, of course we live in a house. Where else would I live? I lived in my office once, but that's another story. We have a house, and I'm not going to tell you where you are because I know most of you will stalk me and just try to find something I'm doing wrong to talk about. That's a joke. But I live in that house. Now, I travel a lot for my businesses. I travel a lot out of town, and Crystal never lets me go by myself because she's afraid I'll burn down a city or something. I'm not for sure. I realized one day, I looked around, I'm thinking, when's the last time that I actually spent time by myself? And I realized it's either Daniel with me or Crystal with me, and they hand me off like they have shared parenting. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. Somebody said that's probably a good thing, right? That's a good thing. We don't want the pastor marred in controversy, right? So I know one thing, when we go out of town, she normally goes with me because she works for herself, and we will always normally stay at different places, but we visit there, we enjoy our time there, and then we come back to our house. Do you know why we come back to our house? Because our house is where the provision is. That's where we eat. That's where our family meets. That's where we raise our kids. That's where we build our life. See, if you're going to have the protection of God in your life, you've got to stop visiting God and begin to dwell in the presence of God. You need to dwell in His provision. So many people want religion. Religion don't get you anything, but when you have a true relationship with Jesus Christ and you move beyond just what a denomination says or the pastor says or what a teacher says, and you really seek to dwell in the presence of God, I'm telling you, when you dwell there, He will provide for you. So many people are afraid to step out. Well, watch me. We're afraid to step out from where we are. We're afraid to step out from being in the shadows of other people. But God's got great, big, amazing things for you. It's time that you start stepping out in boldness and start stepping out from what everybody else says about you and what everybody else thinks about you. He wants to do incredible things, but you got to begin to dwell in the presence of God before that it could ever happen in your life. So it's a secret place. It's a secret place, and I'm just preaching today, and it's like I'm like freestyle rapping right now. Jay-Z has nothing on me. Is that his name? Snoop Dogg. Let's not go that far. Dwell in the secret place of the Most High. See, here's the thing. We struggle with being insignificant. We struggle with making major changes and making impacts in our life, but we want to look and be just like everybody else. You cannot be like everybody else and really walk in fulfillment and destiny and purpose of your life that He wants you to do. Your life is so significant that you can no longer look like everybody else. Your life is so impactful. I want to tell you, they tell me that I should do A, B, and C, and D as a pastor, and the church will grow. You know what? The church may grow, but I don't want to be like everybody else. If I'm just like everybody, I don't want to be. I want the Seans of the world. I want the Carries of the world. By the way, happy birthday. I probably ought to take my medication. I wouldn't. I don't want to be like everybody else. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. In order not to be like everybody else, I got to step from outside of their shadow, and I need to move in the shadow of God. And the shadow of God is a secret place. In other words, it's somewhere. It's like a secret clubhouse. Not religion. I'm talking about what he wants to do with you. No other person can know, and they cannot tell you. You've got to find it for yourself. And I want to tell you, I love pastoring this church, and we're going to do some things together that, everybody else is doing. We're going to get together with other churches. But I want to tell you, we're never going to be like them, because God's got something special, and no one else is going to understand it. No one else is going to understand it. I don't know if you know this, but I'm short. I know y'all thought I was tall. Somebody said, why do you wear cowboy boots? Is it because you're from the country? Nope. Gives me 2 inches. You with me? And if I come in taller, that means I put some lift in my cowboy boots, and I might just do that. But I told the story as a joke a couple weeks ago. Daniel and I were in another city, and it was crowded. I mean, people were all around us, and I said, man, I'm starting to get a little anxiety. He said, don't worry, little buddy. I'm like, stop calling me that. I am pastor, little buddy. Get it straight. Show some respect, dude. And he said, don't worry. I said, what? He said, grab a hold of my belt loop. I said, I am not grabbing your belt loop. And he started taking off without me. I want to tell you something right now. I'm a lover, not a fighter. I'm a lover, not a fighter. I promise you that. And he started taking off. I'm like, oh, no. And I thought, if he's moving, I'm moving. I still couldn't keep up with me because he's got 8-foot tall legs, and I'm like Papa Smurf. So I said, I grabbed the hold of his belt loop. And there he drugged me through that city, crowded streets. And I've said, I didn't fear him. You know why? Because he's taller. And he had a gun. Yeah, my manliness factor just went way down there. Point being is this. When I was in his shadow, I knew he could get me through the crowd, even though I couldn't see over the crowd. When you get out of everybody else's shadow that are just like you, listen, they're just like you. I have other pastor friends that got way bigger churches. But the truth is, they're no better than me. They're not called. They don't have a strong, they don't have a greater purpose than me. They got the same. It may be different, but God's just using them just like he wants to use me. But it's mindset. And I view them as the big protector. But the truth is, when I step out of my own shadow and everybody else, out of their shadow, and I pursue God, as God moves, I know he'll get me through what I'm going through, because he is my source. He is my covering. He's the lifter of my head. And I'm right now in one of the scariest points in my life. And never, ever, ever, ever underestimate the importance of facing your fear. Don't ever, is this all right today? Don't ever underestimate the importance of facing your fear. Because with each fear is an opportunity of a testimony. With each fear, there's an opportunity that God's going to reveal himself in a new way. I used to remember when Tori was a baby. And that was 21 years ago. I kind of miss those days. She used to come and see me back then because she couldn't leave. You'll get it in just a second. But I remember there was times where I would struggle mentally. I would go to Sam's Club and buy every bit of formula that I could just in case something would go wrong. I used to have to worry I'd have to have this much money in my bank account and all of these things because I was afraid to face my fear. But at the same time, God was telling me, fear not. That's not of me. That's not of me. But one day, as God began to move and I had to get outside of my box and he began to take me through that crowd just like Daniel did, every step of the way I had things hurled at me. I lost everything I had, lost my cars, lost my job, lost my home, lost my marriage, didn't know where each meal was going to come from. I mean, I was always fed. Look at me, I'm not too tiny. But I was always fed. I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. I didn't know how I was going to pay my car payment. Everything that I used to fear came up on me at one time. But I had a choice to make. I could either go back in my little corner and go back in the shadows just like everybody else and just live day to day, just going through normal life. But what I finally had enough courage to do is grab God's belt loop and let him take me through that. And I stayed in his shadow. And every time that I encountered lack, he showed up that very moment and revealed himself as my deliverer, my provider, my healer. When I was alone and I had no one else, he was my friend. He was my comfort. Everything that every time you face your fear and keep in his presence and trusting him, he will reveal himself in a new and unique way, and that becomes your testimony, your friend. My friend, it becomes your testimony. So I got to hurry. Verse 2. He is my refuge. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge. Everybody say, I will say. I will say. What gives you the courage to stay in the presence of God instead of seeking the presence of man or relationship? Some of you need to get up right now and get out of I've said it just a few weeks ago and someone took me at my word and they did it. Some of you need to get up and get out of a couple relationships because they're your fortress, they're your protection, they're your provision. And you know, as long as you keep staying there, you're going to have the same old thing you've always had. You're going to be abused. You're going to continue to live in poverty. You're going to continue the same old cycle. See, that's because you're in the shadow of something else. Switch shadows. Everybody say switch shadows. But that takes courage. That takes courage. How do I overcome my fear and my doubt? I love it what David's saying. David is stepping out and doing amazing things. He is changing history. He's facing fears. We know the story of David. Even his own army turned on him at one time. His own son tried to overthrow him. That's why you got to be careful. Where'd he go? That's why I need to be careful. That's why I have to keep him in my house. You know, we're never going to let Preston's bedroom be in the basement. I got to be where I can keep an eye on that dude. David, he constantly did this in order to overcome his doubt, his unbelief, and continue to walk in faith, even though he was a man that made a lot of stupid decisions in life. I feel like I might be him once in a while. I've made like one bad decision. I was wrong one time, 1985. But then I was mistaken. David was just like you and I. David was chosen to be king, even though he was just a shepherd guy, a little boy. He wasn't a little boy, but he was just a shepherd out in the middle of a field. He was so insignificant. There was no doubt he struggled with identity issues and insecurity issues. He probably felt like he wasn't good enough. After all, Saul being the king he was the king that stood head and shoulders above every man in Israel, David. But he figured out something that Saul and nobody else figured out, that it was God that gave him his strength, God that gave him his chance. So what he did, he said, I'm going to dwell in your secret place. It's a secret place. In other words, what God has for you is so much bigger that no one else may see it in you, but you got to believe anyway. When people told me that I should never pastor again because of what I did, and they said you should never preach again because of what I did, and they disinvited me from ever, my phone stopped ringing about 10 years ago. I used to preach all over the place, all over the country. I used to do all of these things, but I did something kind of stupid, kind of really stupid. We'll just leave it at that. My phone stopped ringing. People looked at me and said, no one will ever want to hear you speak again. And I listened to that for the longest time, but I realized that God had such a perfect plan that he was going to use every one of my faults, every one of my failures, every one of my struggles, everything that I've struggled with in the past, currently struggle with, and I've learned to embrace who he is in the plan for my life. And you cannot be able to, I refuse to let you define what God's secret is for my life. It's a secret because if he told everybody else, they would just try to destroy it anyway. So the question is, how do you get the strength to step out from what you've always been and really go to that secret place? Number one, in the shadow Not necessarily. Number one, in a shadow, the sun's seen, not what's in the shadow. If you're willing to go ahead and sacrifice, if you've been willing to be insignificant for somebody else, wouldn't it be amazing if we'd allow ourselves to be not insignificant, but not seen in the presence of God? You may say, I'm not qualified for what I need to do. I don't have A, B, and C, and D. You know the good news? You're not the face of what God's getting ready to do. He's going to do it through you because of who He is. When you allow yourself to be in the presence, in the secret, in the shadow of God, you're saying, I don't care if I ever get recognized again. I know I'm not strong enough, yeah, but you are. I know I don't have enough money, but you do. I know that I don't have enough charisma, but you do. I don't have this, I don't have that, you're right, but you serve a God that owns a cattle of 1,000 hills. You serve the God that created the earth. You serve a God that created every man, woman, and child just by who He is. So how do I get there? If you're like me, I got to tell the story one more time because I'm really proud of myself. I'm a legend in my own mind. So I have this horrible phobia. It's more than phobia. I cannot stand needles. But more importantly, especially when they're taken out of you instead of putting it in you, I figure I may need that someday. I'll never forget. For 12 years, it's been since I've given blood or I've had a blood test. My doctors are on me. Everybody's on me. I'm like, no. They'd put in there, now, sir, you're going to need to go down to the lab. I go over here to Christ Hospital, or the Christ Network right across from Kroger, and my doctor's right there, Dr. Roberts. He's got a picture of me as you walk in, and not a good one. I walk in, and you see the nurses roll their eyes when I come in through the door because they know I'm the biggest baby. I don't even like to have my blood pressure checked. And every time he'll say, now, Mr. Young, what I need you to do when you're leaving today, I need you to go down the hall, and I want you to go ahead and you need to have a blood draw done. I need to see what's going on. I will promise you, I'll say, yes, sir, I'll get that done, knowing good and well that I'm going to have to pass the blood of Jesus over that lie that I'm telling. I was looking at that man and lying to his face, and I did not care. Don't judge me like that, because you all lie to me like that all the time. And I did. I went finally, after 12 years, there's some things that started happening in my body that I had to have some answers for. It scared me to the point that I had to do it. So this is what I did. I said, oh Lord. I was hyperventilating thinking about this. And finally, I got up one day. I said, come on, babe. She said, what? I said, I'm going to do it. And she knew good and well she couldn't let me drive because I just not show up. It's kind of like you all with church. Never mind. On the inlet, just not just joke. Now watch. So what I did, so I'm thinking, okay. I just closed my eyes and kept saying, I will, I can. Here's what it is. I will. You know the good news is? I sat in the big boy chair and they took my blood. You know what's even better news? I'm not dying. The phlebotomist said, I thought we were going to lose you there. She said, well, that happens all the time. I said, well, that makes me feel better. But she said, sir, the only problem is you started rolling your eyes backwards and started convulsing, and I hadn't even put the needle in your arm. That's never happened. But the point being is, I kept saying, I can, I will. We're not a self-help. I'm telling you, yeah, you need to start declaring you can, you will. However, it's more important to start talking about He is able, He's willing, He can. Look at what He was saying. I'm going to shift from everybody else's shadow. I'm going to shift from Saul's shadow. I'm going to shift from everything else, and I'm going to get into the secret place, and no one may understand what your purpose is for me. No one may even care. No one may even believe me, but I'm going to do it. And how did He overcome that? He said, I will say of the Lord. I will say of the Lord. He is my refuge. He is my fortress. I'm going to keep going fast, son. He is my refuge. He is my fortress. My God. You're my God. You're no longer just my daddy's God. You're no longer just my grandpa's God. I've got a relationship with you. I'm not just going to church. I'm getting in that book. I'm reading it. I got a desire for you. You are my refuge. He is my refuge. God, you're my refuge. God, you're my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him I will trust. Keep going. Verse 3. I got to hurry. Surely he's going to deliver me from all the snares of the fowler. Even though the devil has a plan for me, even though the world has a plan for me, even though the enemies that I have a plan for me, they trying to take me out, but I'm not going down because he's going to deliver me from them. He's going to take me care from even from the peril of pestilence. Oh my God, here we go. Even from the peril of COVID. Do you know how many times I sit in 2020, and I'm closing, I sat in my office wringing my hands and didn't even know if we could make it through that entire epidemic. I didn't even know if we were going to lose this building. By the way, this is what I do for a living. I didn't even know how I was going to feed my family. But here's what I do. The Bible tells me that if I get in a relationship with him and I walk in his protection, he is my source. He's going to deliver me from any from any pestilence. Verse 4. And he shall cover me with his feathers, and under his wings I shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. You shall not be afraid by the terror by night, nor by the arrow that flies by day. I want to teach there, but I won't. Nor the pestilence that walks in the darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. He just covered 24 hours in a day. No matter what season you're in, when you go after his presence, he will take care of you. I hope you got something today.